Steve Roosen from Royal Community Support and Jennifer Brown from Eiros Group, who will be sharing with you some important information on Supports Brokerage. As a reminder, the chat is available to you to chat directly with the hosts, and there will be time at the end of their presentation to address any of your questions. Thank you.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Without further ado, let's get it going.
So my name's Steve Roosen. I'm lead community development coordinator with Royal Community Support. I myself have been doing some brokering with a few individuals, and Jen.
So what Steve didn't tell you is Steve has been doing this good work in New Jersey for a very long time. We've been colleagues for probably about 15 years now in different capacities. My name is Jennifer Brown. I'm the founder and CEO of Eiros Group. We are doing support brokerage in New Jersey. We started about 3 weeks before the shutdown of 2020. So we've been doing it for a little while now. So the service model in New Jersey is through home and community-based services, is called self-direction and fee-for-service. Prior to self-direction, back in the day, so to speak, services were delivered by providers and were limited. That's when we had the really long wait list for any services. Self-directed services opened up the possibility of people being able to control their own services, supports, and lives. There was little choice. It was often about what bed was available where. And if you lived in one county and it was 4 or 5 counties away, you either took it or you waited for the next opportunity to come around. And the bed often came with a day program for the day. Self-direction is a service model for the delivery of services and supports to people with disabilities. The purpose is to expand individual choice and control over the services and supports that people need to live in the community. In 2013, in the very first manual that came out, the delivery of self-directed services was said to be anchored in the following 5 principles. I know it's, 2013 is almost 10 years ago, but it still rings true for me. The 5 principles were freedom, which was the opportunity to choose where and with whom one lives, as well as how they organize their important aspects of their lives. The authority, which is the ability to control some targeted amount of public dollars or the DDD budget. The support, the ability to organize the support in ways that are unique to the individual. Responsibility, the obligation to use public dollars wisely and to contribute to one's community. The confirmation is the recognition that individuals with disabilities themselves must be a major part of the redesign of the human services system of care.
And one of the other points I want to make too is in terms of services prior to self-direction, a lot of people who are seeking services were also restricted by what providers were in their geographical locations. So you had some counties where there might have been multiple providers where people might have had a little bit more choice, but in some of our more rural counties, like in Western and Northern New Jersey or in Southern New Jersey, there's maybe 1 or 2 providers, if that you had the opportunity to choose from, if you could even choose, if you could actually choose from that. So that's kind of also the history of kind of where things were at as to, where we're moving forward with self-direction.
So we're really here today to talk about supports brokerage. And we thought we would start with the question, like, who can use it? We're going to talk about what it is. But to understand, it's in order to purchase supports brokerage in the DDD budget, you must self-direct at least one service in your plan. So that means you can self-direct an employee. Even if you attend a day program, you're still self-directing one part of that, one part of your plan. You could take golf lessons at a local driving range, pottery lessons, cooking classes, skydiving. It's really not limited. Matter of fact, you can choose a traditional provider managed model. You can use a self-directed model, or combination of both models to receive services and supports. So the flexibility is there. It's just in order to be able to use Supports Brokerage, you must self-direct at least one service in your plan. So now we dive into, well, what is it, right? I took this information from this really great guide that DDD and the Bog Center put together. We have it in a link at the end to share with everybody, but it's understanding self-directed services in New Jersey and Supports Brokerage. I use it a lot because I find it helps me explain to people, what it is and in ways that's manageable. So a support broker may assist the family, the person and or the family representative with tasks related to their self-directed services. Being a responsible employer, for example, which includes recruiting, interviewing, selecting, hiring, all aspects of managing the team of self-directed employees, including developing interviewing skills, creating the questions, like what are you going to ask, explain the guidelines. We explain the guidelines of what is okay to request from a family. So, I know in an earlier presentation, one of the presenters said, like, if you're not going to ask it at a cocktail party, don't ask it in an interview. And that's really true, right? Like those, but we also help put together what's called a policy and procedure manual for the staff that are in the home, that are working with the person. We put together a guide for the person. It could be a one-pager. It could be, a bunch of pages put together to explain how best to serve them, and also an emergency folder. Along with that, and Steve, I know we talked a lot about this, is understanding the responsibilities involved with self-direction, right? Yeah. It's that education that we do. We do a lot of that, explaining to people what are some things that are available to them and how they can use their budgets. Go ahead.
All right. So yeah, one of the things too is that people who generally are seeking services, or their family members who are supporting them, probably aren't thinking to themselves of running a business or owning a business, but sort of the role of support broker is to kind of assist and kind of partner with educating and teaching the person who wants to be self-directing how to kind of work those nuanced things, to kind of piggyback on Jen's comment, like how do you interview people? How do you guide the service system? A lot of times we think we know how to interview for staff, but we realize that maybe, you're looking at it from a different lens, where the support broker can kind of offer that perspective, or that outside perspective of, did you consider this, or did you consider that? So part of the support broker's role is to kind of help partner and help kind of educate families and individuals as to how to actually kind of do those things, because it's easier said than done, and none of us are perfect in it, regardless if you're running a business or not. It's still a learning process.
Sure. And I think another thing I also find myself talking a lot about with families is the role of the support coordinator, and how important it is for them to develop a really great relationship with them around developing the ISP and the individual service plan, so that it represents really the need and what is wanted in the service system. We also assist people in helping finding self-directed housing, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but we do that. One of the things with support brokerage, the way we get to sort of identify the need is through person-centered planning. So when it comes up that, okay, the family's really looking for a solution for housing, and they want to know what their options are, we start to then take a look at a deeper dive of what else is the family considering, or the person considering. So in collaboration with the support coordinator, we can make an application to the Supported Housing Connection for either the subsidy through the Supported Housing Connection, or if it's 2-bedroom with a living caregiver, for example, we would make the assist in making the application for the state rental assistance program. Once the assistance is granted, we can also assist with helping them find, with the search, with helping finding an apartment. It's a balance, a delicate balance, because we are actually not realtors. So it's not like we can set up, but we can help you figure out, okay, well, what is Zillow, and where are the websites that have all the wait lists on them for the different the newer housing, for example, that's coming up in many of the towns. Where are those wait lists, and how do we get on them, and what is our town offering, and ways of connecting and doing some networking around it. That's we can really support. And that being said, we have gone with people to look at apartments, but it's there's usually a realtor involved, and we're usually there as like backup support. So
and one of the assets as well with the whole housing piece is when you think about a lot of people that we've worked for through Support Brokerage, it's their first opportunity to move out of most likely their parents' house, or it could be, maybe a provider managed setting. But, if you look back to your experiences doing it, your personal experiences, it's a pretty big task. I think one of the crucial roles of support broker is you're finding an ally that may or may not be your parents or, a relative, but can still offer you perspective and try to teach you, the difference between living, in a rural area versus living in a town or a city, and kind of, what kind of goes into those things. The support broker can be a real big asset in trying to help kind of hone in that vision through planning, but also making sure that the vision is the individual's vision, that it's person-centered and remains being person-centered.
Sure. So a support broker may also assist in the person in cultivating community connections. And we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to go a little bit into this, because this is really, I think this is kind of the heart of the work that we do. It's really diving deep into the person's immediate and long-term needs, figuring out what those are, and then coming up with a plan around and figure out the resources to tie a person into. It's really what, there's the individual tasks that we do, but I think this is really what fuels everything, is the heart of, like I said, of everything that we do. And Steve, you're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to talk about
circles of support.
Yeah, the planning. We talked about this, the planning, meeting the long-term needs. Let's go into the circles of support first before we do the star.
Yes. So obviously, a support broker, one of the things that they can offer, support brokers can offer, is helping people create circles of support. So I know we spoke about this the other night, but a circle of support basically is you're creating a network of people who are looking to come be a part of an individual's network, in terms of being able to help them kind of figure out a solution to something to an outcome they're looking to achieve. What a circle of support is not a charity situation. So you're not coming to a circle to basically be Johnny's friend, but more or less, there's value with each person who kind of comes into it. So obviously, if you look at this image here, obviously, you have people that might be involved in circle support, that might be, friends, family. They're offering that kind of emotional support. They're generally the people who know the person really well. But the circle might think of, take housing, for instance. If someone's looking to move out of their home, that circle might be looking at trying to find, do we know someone who's a realtor within our circles? If someone's looking for a job, you might be looking, someone's looking to get a job working at a deli or something. They might be thinking, do I know someone who works in that? Or how can I connect somebody? Just like the typical kind of networking that we do. And then the last thing is the economic exchange. Those are people like the direct support professionals, or, any kind of paid support that's in that person's life that's looking to kind of be there. But the importance of the circle is to help, and support the person in doing the planning and reaching their outcome.
Sure. And we use circles of support when for a couple of different things. They're great for celebratory events, right? For when something has been accomplished, and you want to gather a group of people that really understood what just happened and the significance of it. And I think we also use circles of support in the work that we do. But I shouldn't say it quite like that. We tap into people's circles of support, right? We don't work with them, right? We tap into them when there's something that has come up where, maybe there's a big decision to be made, right? And the people that are making that decision, need a different perspective, or need more more people that know and love the person to weigh in and say, hey, you know, this has been my experience of them. And I think it for us in the work, it's offered opportunities for us to see people in a different way, right? And you know, somebody who has a friendship, you know, for example, I know a person that you know, she has a great relationship with the people at the bagel shop, right? And you know, this is a person that, you know, you wouldn't traditionally think that, right? And so she goes in the bagel place and it's, hey, how you doing? And you know, give me my tea, please. And, you know, and this and that. And it's like this whole new part of her, you know, and it is economic exchange, right? But what's happening from that is there's this opportunity now for that person to move from economic exchange closer to the friendship, because they are developing. And that's how we kind of develop our relationships, right? So we meet somebody and we get to know them, and we start to like them, and we say, hey, you know what, I'm throwing a dinner party, or I'm going for a walk, or there's opportunity for people to move in, you know, closer into the circle, and there's opportunity for people within the circle to get a different perspective on the person, as well as troubleshooting and brainstorming and saying, hey, listen, you know, this is what's going on, we need to make a change here. What is everybody thinking, right? So there's a lot of different ways to use the circles of support. And, you know, like Steve said, especially when you're doing something like housing, right? Like, who's got a couch, right? You're moving into this big empty apartment now, and, you know,
who's going to help you move?
Exactly.
All those types of things.
Exactly.
Who's going to buy the pizza for the person who's moving, you know, or
right.
to help the movers.
Right.
I also think the broker's role when it comes to circles as well is it doesn't have to be necessarily this big formal thing. I mean, it really kind of comes down to assessing, you know, what makes sense for the person. Some people have circles where the family has, I've walked into a situation, the family has already kind of started some type of informal circle, where other people have circles where it's just all paid staff, but they're looking to kind of expand it. But in both cases, they're both crucial in terms of helping to support, you know, the individual achieve their outcomes. And the other point I want to make about circles of support is that question that comes up is what happens, you know, a lot of parents have that question, what happens when I'm gone? A lot of times it's those relationships that kind of probably are fostered through the circle of support that are going to be there to ensure a health and safety kind of factor. It may not be, they're going to be the ones watching over to make sure that the staff are, you know, showing up when they're supposed to, making sure that the person's aspirations are being achieved and recognized. Like, the circle does have that crucial kind of component. And the good thing about a broker is they can kind of help to facilitate and oversee that whole process to ensure that it does happen. And it doesn't mean the broker's running the circle. It means that they're helping to kind of, you know, keep that idea still fresh in the mind and making sure it just doesn't fall wayside.
Yep, I agree. I think when we do the work and we strengthen the circle of support, some of the other things that we do, like the helping people find staff, it's also becomes a little easier because now we have this identified group of people, and it's, you know, hey, you know, does anybody know a person that's looking for some work, right? And when you start to be able to use the circle of support in that way, then you know you have a really strong one that that's going to continue on the model as well. So that's it's another important feature. Another tool that we use, so we use a lot of different person-centered planning tools, right? There's maps, there's paths. I'm a trained facilitator in those, and Steve, I think you are as well. There's something kind of new called a Liberty Plan, and that's sort of a shrunken down. It's not the big 8-foot piece of paper that you put up for a map and a path, but it's a smaller plan that you can do sitting at a table with somebody, so that if that, you know, but it captures some of the same information. We recently also took the Charting the Life course series and became ambassadors here. And this is the Integrative Support Star. Integrative Support Star is really about making sure that each one of these boxes, right, has some things in it that make a person's life better, right? So if you look in the lower right-hand corner, there's something called eligibility specific. that's all the paid supports, really, like the dependent on the person's disability. The rest of the components of the STAR are more of the natural and the I don't want to say community, but more of the I guess more of the community-based or the natural supports that a person has. When we take a look at this and we start working with a person, sometimes we find that there's a lot of eligibility specific stuff and not a whole lot of personal strengths and assets that are known, or not a lot of relationships, right? So we take a look at this from the beginning and figure out, what do we need more to balance things out in any particular area. And that helps us also take a look and see maybe there's an unknown, something unknown that the family or the person hasn't discovered that's missing in their life. And I don't mean that in a, let's figure out what's missing in your life kind of way. I just mean more of a, oh, that's interesting. Like, I have a lot of really great family relationships, but where are my friends and where are the acquaintances, and to start to really kind of look for those things. Because when you have this integrated STAR and there's balance in each component of it, it's like the services are not on top, right? The services are just another part of it. And it's balanced out in a way that it provides just a kind of a better balance of what's important to you and what's important for a person. So, that. Okay. So we've talked about who can have support brokerage, right? We talked about a person can have support brokerage if they're self-directing one or more service in their plan. And that can be a self-directed employee. It can be a goods and services. It can be a class. We support people that live in congregate group settings, like in group homes and supervised apartments that want to transition out of there. So you don't, you can live in a group home and get support brokerage. You just have to have in your plan that you're going towards self-direction, right? So we know who can use it. We talked a little bit about what it is. We talked about the fact that support brokers can help find staff for people, can help you. Steve talked about setting up, the employer of record or the agency with choice model, setting up the person in charge as sort of in a good business way, so that there's the policy and procedure manuals. There's an understanding of the expectations. We talked a little bit about the tools that we use in order to do the job. We kind of rushed through some of them, but the idea is that we work to do planning with the person that is about the person with the person at the table. We're going to talk a little bit now about things we don't do. Mm-hmm. Steve, you want to go over these?
Sure. Yeah. And it's really important to understand why we put this up here is because support brokerage is a service and it's intended for people to be self-directing. So if your support broker, if you're in a position and you feel that your support broker is going to kind of do all these different things, like, so the first one, perform the employer related tasks for the person or their representative. So the thing is that if you start to think of support brokers, trying to, like, they can help with interviewing, they can help with recruitment. They can kind of be an ear to kind of run things by, but ultimately the person who's self-directing, the family or the individual, they're the employer of record. It doesn't make sense for the support broker to get involved in kind of day-to-day performance issues or whatnot, because they are not the employer of record. And that kind of actually, and if you were to have a support broker fulfill that, you're kind of almost talking about a provider situation. It's almost like working with an agency. Obviously, support brokers, they don't make referrals to traditional DDD or Medicaid approved services. Ultimately, like the support broker is going to help you try to identify, especially really for things in the community, things, they will work with you to partner with you to kind of identify things that person wants to do, opportunities that might exist, but they're not there to refer in that sense, or there to partner. Obviously, they're there to help with the housing piece, to help you kind of think about and plan, what does moving out look like? What does it feel like? who's involved in that process. They're not necessarily kind of being, a real estate agent, trying to show you listings, going with you to each listing themselves, because it's not sustainable, and so that's not what the service is for. Obviously, they're not a duplicate of support coordination services, which a lot of times that does get confusing for folks. I have a support broker, support coordinator. What's the difference? Obviously, with a support broker, it's a service that support coordination can refer out to work with the person, but they're not going to be providing the same services of the support coordinator. And obviously provide any other service than support brokerage to that person. So the support broker isn't there to go run through, again, like timesheets to make sure the person, filled their timesheet out correctly. They're not there to, remedy a situation if there's conflict between the self-directed employee and the person or the family. They're there to kind of help, assist the family and trying to, in the individual, and trying to, identify staff and think about what would make a good staff, and try to get people thinking about, expectations and all those types of things. But they're not there to be that employer of record. They're not there to fulfill those responsibilities. And ultimately, if people are choosing self-direct, that means they're in control. It's not the support broker that's in control. It's the person and their family that's in control in those situations. But in order for support broker to be successful, I think that distinction really needs to be made, so that it doesn't blur the lines and people don't get upset because they're not realizing what service they're actually utilizing.
Yeah, I like that. And, when we talk about performing the employer related tasks for the person or their representative, if best practices is around, appraisals, right? So we're not going to necessarily do the appraisals, but we will help figure out what you want to appraise on. We're not going to solve the employee issue if there's conflict, but we are going to be able to maybe help mitigate some of that or facilitate some conversations around that. So it's not like we have a whole list of things that say we're not going to do that. It's more of, we just want people to understand that when we cross that line over to being more like an agency, then that's where it becomes mucky, because we want to actually, for the most part, not in every situation, but we kind of want to create a situation and leave the situation better than when we got there. Right. And we don't want, I think that there's some advocacy around making support brokerage a long-term service. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. We just have to be really careful on how we do that so that we don't become the agency, so that the employees don't call us when there's conflict, or if they do call us, but they understand that we're going to be working with the employer of record to figure that out. We don't help find, when it says we don't help navigate housing options. We don't help navigate licensed housing. Like, we can't help you find a group home. We can't help you find a day program. The other thing that that Steve and I were talking about a little bit is this idea of when a person's in crisis, right? There's some stuff that we are really good at in crisis, and there's some stuff that just the nature of the way that the service system works, it's not going to be a good thing, right? We recently had a person in crisis that we had to help navigate several different service systems, right? We had to help them with a Section 8 issue, a Social Security issue. We helped them navigate and get, the MCO, the Managed Care Organization, their Medicaid provider. We got their case manager to help us find a provider, right? Help them find a provider. But we initiated these tasks, and we walked it through in such a way that the person now knows the next time there's a Section 8 problem, these are the people I need to call. This is the way it needs to be handled. So we're really good in that way, and being a resource in crisis. Where we're not good in crisis is with staffing. Finding staffing is a process that often takes some time, especially if we spend some time getting to know the person and figuring out what their likes are. Steve, you and I talked about this. We don't just stick people together. We share this value, Steve.
Yeah.
we go out and we look for people that are that have similar interests, that live in the area, so that they're going to be more likely to connect that person to their community. That takes time.
And I think also too, like what's really important with when it comes to the staffing piece is people, you know, if the person wants to be supported by a self-directed employee, if that person does leave and they might have someone already lined up wanting to work and willing to go, there's still a fiscal intermediary process that they have to go through in terms of getting signed up. So sometimes we've worked with people who have been, you know, if they're going through crisis, it may not make sense for them to kind of engage in support brokerage right away. However, you know, support brokerage can be there to, you know, support them when hopefully that crisis subsides and they can kind of be in a position to kind of better think and plan out where they want to go.
Right.
Some people have support brokers and they go in self-direction and something happens unexpectedly. And they may need additional supports, and that's fine until, you know, things can kind of stabilize. But it's very clear to say support brokerage is not going to be a good thing is if a person's cycling through agencies and not being able to find good staff and then think, well, if I get a self-directed employee, the support broker will find someone better. That's you're setting yourself up to fail. So we want people just to understand that, because we don't want people to kind of get what's the word I'm looking for? Put off by support brokerage if it doesn't work to find the DSPs if they're going through crisis. We want people to kind of, you know, we want people to understand what they are getting themselves into, because support brokerage can be a very great asset to them if that works out.
Yep. Why is this not working? Next slide. Here we go. Questions. This is the fun part. So we, Steve and I came up with some questions that were often asked. And I know we've probably covered a lot of this already. Can you help find a group home? Nope, we can't help find a group home. It's a group home is licensed. It is something that a support coordinator can help you with. We can help you through the process of getting, like I said, a supported housing connection subsidy or a 2-bedroom state rental assistance voucher. Or if, you know, we also help people get on wait lists and for Section 8 and for SRAP when they're open. We don't really need to do that so much anymore because we do have the availability of the supported housing connection. But once you get a supported housing connection voucher, we also help you move that from there to to either the state rental assistance program or a Section 8 if it becomes available. So we are able to help with those, with that part of it.
Does the support broker directly manage the self-directed, the SDEs, like discuss performance issues? So no, simply no. What the support broker can do, however, is kind of be that sounding board. So in my experience being a support broker, I've worked with families and individuals who have needed help, at least initially coming up with good interview questions. Things that that they may not be thinking about in terms of looking to identify staff. But when it comes to performance issues, you know, support broker can be there to listen to the individual or the family kind of discuss what's happening, but it's ultimately up to the individual and the family to actually execute the decisions on what is actually happening. The support broker is not going to be able to say, you know, you're suspended, you're fired, or whatever that might be. You're the person who's self-directing. They're the employer of record. They're the ones who have to be able to do that. And the support broker can work with them to, you know, build confidence or kind of lead them down, you know, teach them how to do that. But ultimately that responsibility falls upon, you know, the person and the family.
Steve, we just got a question in the chat. It's Sure. What is a market rate for a support broker? So if someone wants to directly hire a support broker, they know what approximate wage to pay them. Currently, the rate for support brokerage is $24.36 an hour. 24.36, is that 609? Yep.
Around that, yeah.
Right, around that. I'm not, it's a good question because I'm not exactly sure if support brokerage is able, it says it's available in the manual. I'm not sure that it's able yet for a person to hire a support broker as a self-directed, and it would be considered a self-directed employee through public partnership. So I don't believe that option's available just yet. But yeah, it's 24.36, and we are working on increasing the rate because of the amount of stuff that you have to know in order to do it, for lack of a more polished way of saying it. There's a lot that you need to know that goes into it. There's a lot of training that we do. We're constantly doing training here, and just learning more stuff, learning more that we can help people with. So
there's another question. If the circle of support does the circle of support consist of, if it consists of paid individuals, do they get paid for participation? No, that's actually kind of counterintuitive to the actual circle. Because ultimately at the end of the day, I'm willing to bet you that if you were to pay people to be part of a circle, the minute you can't pay them, they're out of there, and it really defeats the purpose of the circle. It kind of goes against the ideology and what the circle's about happening.
Right. So how do you advertise for a self-directed employee? So we advertise, we run some ads through Indeed. We also are on all the college boards, and most of the college boards in New Jersey, although they're not very keen to let us post because it is an in-home position, considered an in-home position. And we also do, depending on where the person lives, we will go to the area and figure out, where are the ShopRites and the Quick Checks and or the Wawas, depending where you are in Jersey, and figure out where people go a lot, where there's places to post. We give flyers to the family members and to the person and say, hey, listen, the next time you go to the library, stick one up, because so it's a sort of a multifaceted approach to advertising.
And also we try to encourage people when this is appropriate to kind of think about their social networks of people. And that's necessarily, you're not, asking every single person, but you want to let people know that you're looking to hire someone, maybe to support Johnny. Just kind of put that out there, because sometimes you never know what you'll get from that.
Okay. And can you find a doctor? So the one thing we can't do, or one of the things we can't do, is we can't duplicate a service. So the managed care organization has long-term care managers that are set up to help people find providers in their areas. But what we can do is, once you get that list, we can help you strategize on how you're going to tackle the list. So are you going to, are you looking for providers close to you? Are you willing to go further for one that has different qualifications? Those kinds of things. But we can't actually help you find a doctor.
The next one, how do you identify a list of apartments and then show us each one? That's a realtor. That's sort of a duplicate of services in a way. What we do is, the support broker's role is to help the person kind of think about what that could look like. What the apartment looks like, what it feels like, going back to those things, the characteristics of where do you want to live and why do you want to live, where do you want to live. The support broker can certainly help try to find leads. Like, they can connect people to Zillow. They can connect people to, apartments.com, whichever sites those might be. Also work with the person, the family, to kind of think about, because a lot of times it's the first time people are looking for apartments. What do you ask them? How do you talk to them about the housing voucher? How do you talk to them about, the situation at hand? Why would Johnny be a great asset to live in this apartment or in this apartment community? Those types of things. That's the role of the support broker. But the support broker might come out if they have time to see the apartment, but that's not their primary job. And a lot of times there's just not enough hours in the day to even be able to do that. Right. So it doesn't really make sense.
So our last question, how, I guess I have a typo here. How can I find someone with enough experience to support my loved one? So we spend a good deal of time developing a job description, and we have 5 minutes. Oh, sorry. So as part of the process, we develop a very specific job description that goes into detail and talks about what the person likes to do, how they like to be supported, and really almost to the point where it's like, all right, already, right? But the more detailed we get, the better. And then from there, we develop the job ad so that when we interview, there's no surprises, right? There's nothing, we get through the process and the person shows up to the house and says, but I didn't know I had to do that. It's like, well, yeah, you did, because we talked about it in the interview, and, we talked about it. It's in the ad, if you read the ad, so we really spend a lot of time kind of taking a look at that, at that stuff.
And part of it too is that I think as a support broker, I mean, there's a certain reality that people say is, Mrs. Doubtfire doesn't exist, so we have to kind of do that legwork in terms of what are your actual expectations of the job, and kind of picking back on what Jen is saying, like, how do we vet people? The support broker might help with screening and stuff, but really and truly it's about, the individual and the family kind of knowing what they want, or trying to learn as much as they can about knowing what they want in terms of that person.
So support brokerage is a service that is available through a person's DDD budget. It's not available through goods and services. It's actually a service, a waiver service. That was a question that just came in the chat. So the resources, I just wanted to go over the resources that we used to develop this presentation. Again, the Bog Center, and the link is here. The slides will go out so you can have this link. I'll also put the link in Charting the Life course and inclusion.com before we send this all out. And the DDD community care program manual, we use that as well. So we have like 3 minutes left. If anybody else has any questions, anything that they want to ask. Paula, are you trying to ask a question?
Well, I was listening. I've been listening, and so in other words, as a parent, I would have my circle of support, and if anything were to happen to my husband and I, it is basically left up to somebody in my circle to continue the care of my child using the services of like the DSPs that you possibly have found, or where she's housed. There's like, where do you, you can't always just depend. For instance, I don't have any family that I can depend on in this area to do that. I mean, maybe.
So this is one of those times where, like, I'm advocating for making support brokerage kind of a longer term service, so that we get to know you and your loved one, and we're tapped into the circle of support. We have a great relationship with your support coordinator, and we're going to be there, hopefully after, you're going to live 40 years, I promise you. But
you can use the word. I mean, we know we're going to die.
Right. And so that's the hope, is that we do enough person-centered planning and dig deep enough that we create something that's going to be sustainable. That's going to be I have a son, right? And this is why I'm doing this work, is because I want self-direction to outlive me. Mm-hmm. And the only way that I can figure out how to do that is by doing this work. And doing it at a high level, so that, and aligning myself with people like Steve and Patty Kay, who's on the call, like, that are also doing it this way, because that's what's gonna outlive us, is strengthening those circles of support. No, your circle of support is not gonna, may or may not step up and show up every day and see what's going on. It's not gonna do the day to day, but that's where, like, a long-term support broker service, possibly could do that, right? So so I don't know if I answered your question. I think that we have work to do, to continue to I remember when I started working in this service world, and people were fighting self-direction because they're like, it is not sustainable, right? And so we've come so far in such a short period of time, but we still have work to do. We still have work to make it sustainable, and we need to keep having these conversations and figuring it out and strengthening it together. The good news is time's up. But Trisha Brennan, I don't know if you're familiar with Trisha Brennan at the division. They just
Yeah, I just wrote her name down today. Yeah.
Yeah, she's an ally, and they've started a group of advocates went to her and the division and said, we need an office of self-direction because
Right.
because of this, right?
Right.
And so keep her name. She's lovely, and she's,
I have
you know,
it. Yeah.
and let's keep talking about this and figuring it out.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, definitely. I'm sure that the pandemic actually aided families in a way in getting self-direction, because they finally allowed parents to say, be like on my daughter's SDE through PPL. So it allowed that where it wasn't allowing that before, which, you know, I think is a good thing. And I know it's ongoing. Do I have time to ask you one more question? Or are you-
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your participation in this. We do have another session that started at 5. That's starting at 5 p.m.
I'm signed
So I would invite anybody who needs to take a break, go ahead and do that. And I'm going to stop the recording now. And if you want to continue to chat with Jen, you can do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And also, you guys can, I believe our emails and such, our contact info's on this as well. So if you do have other questions, obviously we're available to talk.